Yeah, or else they haven't toast call one or the other. Either way, they're a bunch of dirtbags. What's that weird one? Almost looks like a bowling ball. With like hard plastic.
Yeah.
One you don't want to kick.
That's Japanese stuff. Got all their writing on it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I should look it up. Tell them to come and get the garbage. Give an email. Bunch of rope. Oh, there's ropes and a few. And crab traps. There's like a water bottle every, what, 15 feet, 10 feet? There's a weird one, whatever that was. Look at all the frickin' water bottles. Yeah, the war on straws is really good though. Really successful. Haven't seen one straw yet.
Just one bottle.
Yeah, things are looking up. Oh, this is a big one.
Oh, wow.
The writing is on that one. Oh.
Made in Japan.
Japanese. It's like they're leading polluters on this beach in Canada so far. "21 years ago today, I was in a remote camp in the middle of the northern Rockies, the eastern slopes of the northern Rocky Mountains, British Columbia. And to get to that camp, you have to ride. All depends. It depends on the trail and the weather. Sometimes it would take 9 hours. Sometimes it's taken 11, 13. And our hunters would get to us via a bush plane, small Super Cub, and land on a remote airstrip that was cut in a bottom of a valley in a willow strip. A strip of willow in the bottom valley is cut out, and that's how they would arrive. And we'd be out there. We would be out there for 100 up to 100, 120 days straight. And 21 years ago today was supposed to be the hunter change, because September 1st to 10th is typically our elk hunt, also comboed up with grizzly bear, moose, and whatever, sheep possibly, but it's typically our elk hunt. And then September 11th is when the bush plane would come in and switch up the hunters. bring us new hunters and take out the previous 2 hunters. The plane didn't come. Kind of odd, because weather was fine, weather was good, but the plane didn't arrive. And the next day, the plane didn't arrive again. We're like, what's going on? And at that time, we didn't have satellite phones in our camp then. I mean, they were available then, but we didn't have one. And we didn't have any way of contacting anyone. The only way we could have made contact with anybody is either the bush plane coming in, or we would have to get on a horse and ride out to Alaska Highway. And then, if it was an emergency, we would ride out to Alaska Highway, tie up the horses inside the bush, and then hitchhike. We would have to hitchhike for about, 50 miles to get to the main ranch, or a phone of any kind. So anyways, finally the plane came in. And the pilot, the outfitter at that time, his delivery is a little off. Not off, he's just had a different flavor of delivery when he spoke. So the 2 hunters that we had, their vehicles were actually parked at the International Airport in Washington, D.C. That's where their vehicles were. And the pilot got out, the outfitter, and he looked straight at the hunters, did saying this, and he said, "Your country's under attack. The Pentagon's been hit. The World Trade Center buildings have been demolished. And there's nobody flying anywhere in North America right now. And I had to get a special permit to fly this plane to come and get you." And that's how I found out about 9/11, what happened. And it was a handful of days later, after the fact. And you imagine our reaction. I'm kind of standing there looking like, what? And the 2 hunters obviously were kind of like, what? And very obviously they were concerned, and they wanted to get in that plane and get out and phone their families as fast as they could and get home to their country. And then what happened after that? There's no time, when the bush plane comes in, there's never really any time to BS or ask questions. The plane comes in, states their business, blah, 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 let's get going. He's usually a panic mode because weather's absolutely uncontrollable up there and winds and shit. So he grabbed a hunter, flew out. You can only take 1 hunter at a time. Like he said, all the hunts were screwed up. People weren't showing up. They can't fly. And he would be in touch with us whenever he could. And that's how they left us, right? And that's how they left us. So it's just us in the woods. No hunters, no nothing. Not knowing what's going on in the world. And that's the only thing we knew. Flew the hunters out. And then I think it was about 6 days later, the bush plane came in again. And I think they were allowed to fly. The northern bush planes were allowed to fly. But at that time, even in northern British Columbia, in the middle of nowhere, the airspace was shut down. And then we had another hunter. He came in. I had a hunter come into camp. And he was Mexican, from Mexico. And interesting story. I guess he had saved up all his money forever. Waited forever, because at that time it was a 2 or 3 year waiting list just to come with us. And he had landed in Edmonton, which is a long ways away. And the flights were all shut down. And here he is, with his rifle and his pack and his gear. And he took a cab to Fort St. John, British Columbia. I don't know how many hours that is from there. 6 or 7, probably, I'm guessing, maybe. And then from there, he saw a rig on the side of Alaska Highway, pointed north, and he just went up to the rig, opened the passenger door, and said to the guy, "I come with you. I need a ride. I come with you." Now, could you imagine a man with darker complexion, black hair, camouflage clothing on, a weapon in a case in a bag, within a week after 9/11, rushing your truck on the side of Alaska Highway saying, "I need a ride, I'm getting in a panic." Right? You see the comedy value in there in a way. And then he rode with that trucker, agreed, and gave him a ride all the way north up to Fort Nelson, which is another, 4 or 5 hours farther. And then they made the phone call, and the outfitter came and picked him up, flew him into camp to me. And he brought with him a People magazine. I'll never forget, People magazine. It had all the photographs in there of all those innocent people who died 21 years ago today. It was pretty was something else. What a tragic thing. And I know every single human being today, unless you're absolutely brain dead, is thinking about that day, 21 years ago today. Why did it happen? I don't know. Who did it? I do not thoroughly know myself. I do not believe the people they claim to be responsible are responsible. That's just me. I do believe it was a statement being made. I think that was a statement being made, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, regardless, the amount of loss of life that day was absolutely unbelievable. Tragic, sad, disgusting. I thoroughly do believe that the people responsible have not paid in any way. Not a nothing since that happened. That's what I honestly believe with all I got. The people that are responsible for 9/11 have not been exposed and have not paid. And I sincerely hope they do one day. What a disgusting, disgusting display. Tragic. And to think that however many people responsible for that had it in them to be able to decide whether or not all those innocent lives were expendable to make a statement. How disgusting is that can actually go down today. But anyway, I think about that day, not just today. When September hits, you can't help but not think about that day. Just the fact that it's September, not only that one day. So there you go. I hope those innocent souls are resting in peace, or they are absolutely rocking it out in the next lifetime. Now, let's get some voices heard while we still can, because we are all still alive, right? We all still get to be alive today, and many, many innocent people do not get to be alive today. And it wasn't a choice. Anyway, I could rant on and I could go on about a whole pile of issues with that particular time of life, and but I won't. We'll keep it about the memory of the people for now. And we're going to hear some people as well and get some other truths out that we can get out today, right? This is titled A Footprint. Steve, I had one email story on your site. Okay, sorry. Steve, I've had one email story on your site. I remembered a photo taken in '99 in Lincoln County, Montana. We were early spring morel mushroom scouting in a burned area when we came across this track. Too cold and too far back for someone to be walking barefoot. Use my name, I don't care. Steve Cooper. Thanks, Steve. Yep, that's an odd one. For sure. Check it out. You see that? You see the reflection of the boat in the shop doorway. Is that even focusing on there? I think that's working, isn't it? Gotta get this shot. There we go. Definitely not a footprint, and a footprint like that is enough to make you get quite nervous, I'd imagine. And I'm reading some recent emails in right now, you guys, all right? Some recent ones, just in case some are coinciding with past emails this past week. Yeah, we drove out to Banfield day before yesterday. My pickup truck's out there. My friend is going to drive it back. And then we ran this boat all the way back in yesterday. And tried to stop at a friend's place on the way. And we'll contact that friend today with a picture of her home that I think we took from the ocean before we had to turn and keep going. And I know she's watching right now. And then I had to hire a truck, a big rig, to come and pick up the boat, and I put it on blocks right here in the driveway for now until later on I'll find a trailer. Hopefully I'll hunt down a decent used trailer and get a trailer underneath that thing. And now it's all about packing to get ready to go up north for me now. And I think I may be leaving tomorrow. Anyway, I don't even know why I'm telling you guys that. Anyway, let's listen to this. This is titled Oklahoma Roman Nose State Park Bigfoot encounter. All right. Hello again. My wife wanted me to share my father-in-law's encounter, and since he just passed, I agreed. This happened in the very early 1960s. He drove a 1957 Ford Fairlane, and if you know, that was an all-real metal car. He was dating his future wife, and him and his best friend went out to the park to have a make-out section with the girlfriends. Well, they got there and were messing around and built a small fire. Well, as young people do, things were moving to more intimate pursuits. As they were heading back to the car, he said every hair on his body stood up and the woods got quiet. So quiet, it was unnerving them. They all complained about feeling like they were being watched. Well, they attempted to recapture the mood, but the feeling kept getting worse. So they decided to leave, and he put the car in gear and began backing up when they hit something huge. It screamed, and they all felt panicked. He put it in gear and peeled out, but the car would barely move. He told me, all I could see in the mirror were huge legs and nothing more. They fled to the nearest town and got out. Well, the bumper was dented pretty bad, and there were 10 nail drag markings on the top of the trunk of the car. Some of them so bad it went through the metal at points, ripping it. What? Holy shit. All of them were dented in and the paint ruined. This freaked him out so bad he would never go back to Roman Nose State Park ever again. He hunted and lived in the woods and would never give it up, but he also would not camp out. When the sun went down, he would go home. Sincerely, Oklahoma Dude. There you go. I wonder how many people are familiar with that park on here. Probably somebody. Guaranteed. Right? Guaranteed. No shortage of couples, young couples parking, who've had experiences. You know, it's funny, the one that always snaps to my memory when I picture being parked, somebody parking in a Chevy park, was an account from Alaska. I read the book of some young people in a car, and they felt nervous, and they could see in the taillights of the car reflection something huge, covered in hair, belly crawling up behind the car. I don't know why that story had an impact on me, probably because it was a long time ago when I read it, and I wasn't so familiar with other people's experiences, and then after having my experience, hearing that one, it made me go, oh God, what the hell was that thing doing? Why was it doing it, right? No thanks. No thanks. As I'm packing to go solo. Today, into the middle of nowhere. All right. Next one's titled CCTV, Leavenworth, Kansas. Again, I'm done effing around. All right. This looks like it's been sent twice or something. I was the wounded twice soldier, CCTV from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I sent you the dead deer 25 feet up a tree picture. Well, where to start? Went back to my deer stand, and it was destroyed. It was made from oil rig pipes, totally destroyed. That was 4 months ago. I'll move on to my fiance's getting slapped with this shit. She struggled with my encounter for 8 years now. She believes me now. LOL. We went to Wyandotte County Lake, Wyandotte County Lake, a month ago, July 2022, to have some fun, if you know what I mean. Had company at my house. We just pulled into a shelter. There's at least 15 shelters around this small lake, and it's a quarter mile south of the Missouri River, Kansas side. I think I may have drove by there. As we were about to do the deed, she looks over to the shelter and sees what she thinks is a homeless person and says, "Stop, look at that shelter." So I did, and I'm like, what the F, not again. And sure enough, there's the bastard was peeking from behind the stone shelter, swaying back and forth. What the F, sick MFer. So now she believes, finally, some relief for me. August 2nd, 2022, I went fishing at the lake again by myself. I've been there 10 minutes, caught a slab crappie, almost, it's spelled crappie, is it crappie? Crappie, whatever. Almost 2 pounds, and then I get slammed on the top of my head with a golf ball sized rock. I'm like, what the F? No other people or cars where I parked. There's woods all around this lake. I'm bleeding pretty good from the rock. So I immediately grab all my fishing gear and head to my truck and leave. I'm driving around the lake. Wyandotte County Sheriff deputies patrol the lake. Finally found one. I stopped and told him what happened. And he's like, it has to be a person effing with me. He's not too happy. So he followed me back to where it happened. We can hear movement in the woods, 40 yards from where I was fishing. He gets out, yells, come on out. No response. So he pulls out his revolver, which I said, not big enough. He heads towards the woods, gets about halfway there, and on cue, here comes that dreadful roar, which took me straight back to Fort Leavenworth. He almost runs backwards. He's walking fast. He looks at me and asks if it roared at me earlier. I said, no, just the rock off my head, which I'm still bleeding. I said, grab your 12 gauge, which he did. As he grabbed it, we could hear the hairy bastard taking off away through the woods north towards the river. My oldest cousin says she is a psychic. Told me at a family reunion why they keep messing with me is due to what I had done in Afghanistan and Iraq. I had dusted a lot of bad guys over there. I was floored how could she know? She said that they consider me a threat. I've told very few in my family what happened overseas, only my fiance and my 2 oldest kids. They didn't even know my cousin or talk to her. So there is what is happening in my world. Steve, I've had enough. If they showed up at my house, it's on 12 gauge slugs are being slung their way. I'm done with this shit. Stay safe with that, brother. Watch your 6, and yes, you still have brass balls. Oh, well, God bless you and yours. Michael, Kansas City. Kansas City, been there too. Okay, Michael, I remember I've had 2 people send in pictures of the deer being hung up on the tree. Obviously, I remember. I don't remember your account with it, though. I don't think. I remember the guy who was blood trailing a deer and it was up the tree. I think that might have been yours. I wouldn't advise chucking, sling, and let it one of these beings unless it was obviously trying to harm you or your family. I would not go out of my way with the intent in. I would not go into the forest. From what I've learned from all you today, I would not want to even entertain the thought of me going into the woods with the 100% solid mind frame of I'm going to hunt one of you bastards down and kill you today. Nope, I wouldn't do that myself. And I would not encourage anyone else to do that. That, I believe, if you were lucky enough to have that mind frame and lucky enough to actually go to the same patch of forest or a valley or whatever, where there may be one or more of these beings, I don't think it's going to work out too good for you if they decided that they wanted to call you on it instead of just simply walking the other way. All right, it wouldn't be good. So everybody's going to do what they're going to do. Everybody's on their own path, on their own ride. You're going to do what you're going to do. But if you were to possibly be curious of how I felt about doing something like that, I wouldn't do it, man. I wouldn't do it. Just tell them to leave you alone. I do that all the time. But so far, it's somewhat working. Somewhat, right? I haven't had any vicious real aggro. You know what? The only time I had that absolute shit scared out of me was I could hear that log was being blasted into the tree years back when I thought I was going to intentionally look for these beings north of Pemberton, British Columbia, and that log was getting blasted into the cottonwood tree in the bottom of the valley. And I could hear it swishing through the underbrush before the impact, and I had a camera on a tripod and a rifle hidden in the grass, and that was when I was intentionally looking, and I took that as an absolute intimidating F you to me, and I've never intentionally tried to seek out these beings since, although I do share the same ground as them, which I rightfully should and can on the face of this planet, right? And I haven't had any serious problems since. Obviously, you guys have seen shit happen behind me. You guys have seen stuff thrown at me. And, yeah, I haven't had anything intentionally intimidating happened to me, I don't think. Intimidating meaning what we've heard. Roars that vibrate your ribs, make you pee your pants, or anything thrown at me like intimidating like a basketball-sized boulder. Never happened. Or a tree. Hasn't happened. That one tree was broken in half about 20 feet up and tossed across the trail behind us after we went past with the quad 2 years ago. But anyway, enough of me babbling. There's a chicken in the shop, if you can hear that. On to another voice. Yetis and UFOs. 9/9/22. Hi, Steve. Yetis and UFOs. 9/22. Is this really about the Yetis? What if this whole Yeti thing is not about the Yetis themselves, but rather about gradually destroying our archaic worldviews and belief systems, paradigms, with regard to reality, a perceived reality which is never valid in the first place? After seeing these things, most people seem to lament the most is that it has shattered their worldview. Well, their worldview was never particularly valid when to begin with. Good riddance, LOL. Like UFOs, those experiencing Yetis are forced to radically alter their belief systems. And yes, friends and family may not be following in lockstep with you on this one. So what? Do we, as individuals, really need to be continually validated by those around us? Do we really need to conform to the bigger group? Think at all times and at each and every turn? Just a thought. Best, John. You never know, John. You never know. Good to see the wheels are turning between the years. Who knows? Who knows? Well, here's another email from the same person. Right off the bat. All right. Well, what else we got? Why Yetis hate canines. Hi, Steve. Why Yetis hate canines. Yetis are an ancient species, an ancient people. They cover the world in various varieties, subset of their species, so that they may appear substantially different, one from the other, even within a given geographical area. Yetis, or more correctly, the forest people, as they prefer to be called, are a proud and ancient species going as far back, if not further, as man, the human species. Native Americans, as well as other native species, have historically had the closest relationship with these creatures. With regard to wolves, they have had a running feud with wolves and thereby the entire canid species. Neither species cares for the other, and the forest people see them as a threat to their safety and well-being. They feel that they are continually harassed by them. These forest people see a specific section of forest as their home, and when humans enter their home, it angers them. In the forest, then, humans are the intruders. Within that section of forest, which a certain family or clan of forest people has determined to be their home. Like humans, certain of these forest people are prone to violence, and yes, at times they kill humans. These are mainly the smaller, lighter colored one as a rule. Most forest people simply want to rid humans that enter their area, their home. Why do they sometimes harass people? They do it for sport, mostly. They think it's funny to fire up our emotions, as they see our emotions as an energy which radiates certain colors. Not all creatures think as we think, see as we see, or feel as we do, and they certainly don't follow our social norms or customs, societal norms or customs. Sometimes individuals will make it a point to study us and our habits. They are playful, but more often than not, we agitate them. Oddly, humans share a lot of genetic structure, DNA, with flies, and likewise we share a lot of DNA with them. But we are not from the same family tree. They are not our relatives or ancestors. If you look into it this further, I am certain you will hear of their long-standing feud that they have with wolves. So many, I'm simply helping to confirm this one facet of their behavior. Best, John. Okay, John. I don't know, man. I don't think we've had anyone write in about anything when it comes to wolves and these beings in the same setting. It's not coming to my brain right now. I can't recall ever reading about anything about wolves and Sasquatch. Not yet. And many of you do know, many of you don't, but I have specifically gone after and hunted and trapped wolves. So much so, I think my face has been on the news I don't know how many times here in Canada when I started a shit show nationwide about our wolf problem that was man-made, and it was time to do something about it because I could see the destruction it was causing. That being said, I thought I'd throw that in so that many of you didn't think I was just killing wolves for the fun of it. It's a shitty job, but somebody has to do it at times. I've had my hands on, I don't know, I've had my hands on probably over 200 dead wolves. And where I trap wolves, where I possibly either caught or shot at least 100 wolves is smack dab in the middle of where I had numerous experiences, and many people had numerous experiences with these beings. And I can tell you this, not once did anything come at me to scare me while I was doing it, and not once did anything try to mess with or tamper with or destroy any of my trap sets for wolves. I did hear tree knocks while I was trapping wolves, not far from what I showed you guys, the stand on those big cedars. And I had an S-twing hammer, which was a hammer typically used by cedar shingle roofers. Had an axe on one side, a hammer on the other, metal shank, bam, 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 and I was blasting 3-inch fencing staples into the side of huge cedar trees. And it was in minus 20. Still about an hour left, half an hour left of light, and that sound and that frozen air was just reverberating off the trees, and who knows what it sounded like from above. And that's when the trees started getting beat on above me on this direction and above me on that direction, and my snowmobile's parked there. But it wasn't intimidating. Nothing was being done to be intimidating. I took it as possibly me doing that one up there going, boom, boom, I'm here, where are you? Boom, boom, I'm over here. So that's not you down there? Nope. That's how I possibly took that interaction. But I abruptly just packed up all my shit, threw it in my bag, jacked around in the tube, looked at the ground, and snowshoed on top of 5 foot of snow all the way to my snowmobile, which was dead in the direction of the one above my snowmobile. And then I had to turn my snowmobile around in fresh snow. And you know how, if you're familiar with snowmobiles, that's stressful because lots of times you'll back up and it'll just go, and it'll get stuck. Because there was no previous compacted track there, it's just me. And then you're just stressing that you're going to get stuck. And I didn't look up. I didn't want to look up. I didn't want to see them. I just wanted to get out of there. And I backed my sled up and pinned it. And I pinned it, and I remember I didn't want to look behind me, and I didn't look off to the side of me. I just pinned it, looked straight forward and left, never went back. And the reason being I didn't want to look, because I know of another guy who was a guide in another camp in the previous outfit I mentioned earlier, and his brother told me that he had one of these beings, a reddish brown one, paralleling him on his snowmobile in Alberta, rural Alberta, and it was paralleling him, running with him, keeping up with him like nothing when he was on his sled, pinning it to get the hell out of there. How crazy is that? And I didn't want to see that, and that was always in the back of my head too, right? So anyways, I don't know, man. If you have any direct information to back up your thoughts or how you came to the conclusion that they've had an ongoing, quote, ongoing feud with wolves, end quote, share with us how you came to that assumption. How do you know? What have you learned? What have you seen? How do you know? Okay? And I'm sure many people would be curious to know about that one. Now, here we go. Another thing too, another quick mention on our First Nations people. They have had ongoing experiences with these beings since time began. They've shared the stories, their history, verbally and in carvings, for generations after generations in their communities about these beings. But from what I have heard direct from our First Nations people, the experiences they have had compared to experiences that non-First Nations, North American First Nations people have had are exactly the same. Exactly the same. In no way have experiences, results, feelings been any different when it comes to human beings. It doesn't matter if you're purple, pink, black, white, brown, whatever. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is the experiences are all exactly the same, and the outcome is always exactly the same. It's between these beings and human beings today. It's nothing's, no one's treated special. No one's treated any different, right? Take note of that one. Yeah. Let's hear someone else. All right, here we go. This looks like a longie. This is a freaking long one. All right, well, tell you what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to read this one, and then I'm going to get my ass in gear and start getting all my gear together. Hello, Steve. Hello, Steve. Let me know if I should have my daughter text this to you. I haven't heard the story yet. Maybe using Word is not good. Thanks, Dan. All right, so he sent it twice. Looks like it worked. My name is Dan. I have a story for you all about the Sabe. Today's the first day I've looked over your site, and I'm wondering if this is the proper format. I'm not into Facebook and all that, but I wanted to know if I could send the story here. I wrote it in Word to be a mistake-free as possible, but I could send both Word and text if you like. If so, okay, hold on a minute. Where is it? Let's go. It made it through. Dear Steve, my name is Dan. I've been watching your site since COVID attacked, tied up at home by the bad ones and a disability. My family story isn't intense, but very true. Like most of the men and women reporting, I too grew up hunting and fishing all my life, and I'm 66 now. I can't get out, but to the doctor's office much now, and our sighting never held my family back from sharing. Art Bell, VTA Junior College, Chico State, and more. My story begins in the early 60s when my dad had a stable vacation due to his employment at the time. We would travel to Northern California visiting family. We would travel north to Ukiah, then north on the 101 to the 299 loop, east to Willow Creek, on the Trinity, then east to I-5 South Redding, then southeast to Paradise. We would then head south, sometimes going to Disneyland, and then on up the coast to home. My parents were very close to their siblings, and it was a great time for the whole family. Vacation time split between the two towns, aunts, uncles, and cousins. In Ukiah, my uncle was a trucker, with my aunt a housewife. We would ride a Willys up into the forest doing what Jeeps do best, rifles and fishing gear in tow. My dad and I also spent time at the airport watching A-26s land, reload, and take off fighting fires up in the mountains. For my 5th birthday, my dad rented a ride from a woman in a Cessna 170, and boy was I hooked. My dad was honorably discharged in World War II, Army Sergeant in the 8th AF B-17s stationed in Suffolk, East Anglia, England. He was a private pilot also. Then on to the Trinity we would head, and depending on how the road was, stayed at the hotel on the way to the Central Valley, then head southeast to Paradise, in the hills above Chico, to see my dad's brother, a professor and CSU, Chico, a wife, a house maker, and cousins. Wife, a housemaker, and cousins. We go boating, fishing, and camping on Oroville Lake, spending family time together. Then we usually went south back over the 101 to VTA, my birth home. Love those Channel Islands. Now on to the story with some history behind. I believe it was late June '64. I don't forget much. I've tied the history together with births, deaths, mom's new '62 Pontiac Bonneville, especially family times and such. My sister's '68, live and can collaborate. We left Ukiah. It's either Ukiah or Ukiah. One afternoon and headed north. Hitting 299 to the Trinity, we headed east and stopped in Wichapec, the Hooper Reservation, and Willow Creek on the Trinity for the evening. That's right, a hotel, no name, that had a fake Bigfoot in the parking lot. Dad, Mom, Big Sis, me, and little brother walked to a restaurant in town and had dinner. It was a neat little town with a lot of First Nations Hoopa influence. I hope that's correct and no disrespect. Totem poles and little shapes all around, little shops all around. We went to bed early as my dad and I were going fishing before sunrise and had the drive on to Paradise to finish this part of the road trip. We left a little before 5 a.m. and headed along the Trinity, as it was along the way to Central California. I was watching for a place to stop as my dad was paying attention driving, it being a winding road. It was just getting light with a beautiful rainbow and orange coming up from the east. I could finally see the river winding below us, and around a right-hand curve, I seen a large pool with a fast-running rift below it. I yelled, "Dad, pull over, Dad!" He pulled over on the other side of the bridge, and we both got out and looked. It was just perfect, beautiful as could be. We got our gear together and started about a 15-minute hike down to the river. I started looking for fish sign in the rift, working my way upriver to a large hole. As I was walking along the bank, as the water slowed, a beach about 50 feet to 75 feet by 10 feet to 15 feet began to get wider as I approached the pool above. I was 7, and I'd been hunting and fishing for a few years. My best friend and I had started trapping. If we couldn't find answers to our questions, we'd go to the library and learn. Plus, Sports Afield magazine wasn't far away. I became proficient at reading trails and tracks and trapping in the Ventura and Santa Clara riverbeds, along with barrancas that had not disappeared. We bought traps at Western Auto, and off we went. I loved that store. Dad bought me my first Winchester single-shot action 22 there. As I scanned ahead, there they were, at least 15 Sabe tracks, and they were fresh. I yelled, "Come here, Dad!" I got down on my hands and knees to the nearest track. They had come out of the river and had gotten bigger, sharper, deeper, and cleaner. The further out they came onto the still wet beach, no sand, and hardly any dew. I mean, these were very fresh, not older than an hour, or so I'd say. The edges of the hole prints were just sharp and clean. The tracks come out of the water, walked into dry sand and rocks, and back along the water upstream. My dad and I studied as we followed up the river. Excuse me. The stride was about 5 to 6 feet, prints about 17 inches by 6. They turned back into the river on some very big rocks covered with green moss. The tracks smashed the moss down and away, showing us a lot of weight. Then they reversed back to the beach and up into the thick tree line along the river behind us. There wasn't any smell, no sounds, and after no fish for 15 minutes, my dad said, "Let's go get the family and some plaster." It was dead silent and still. Although we were constantly watching behind our backs, I never felt in danger, but I felt we weren't alone. We drove back to town, packed up the family, and checked every store in that town for plaster of Paris. There's not one bag anywhere. My dad was not to be defeated. So, we bought up every stinking candle in that town. He grabbed a few Coke cans, and off the family went. We got back to the fishing hole, and my mom stepped across into the top of 1 foot. She wore a 7.5 US woman's shoe and was inside the width inside the width of the ball from one side to another. Inside the width, I'm guessing. We did not have a measuring tape or a camera, but measured as best we could. Some of the tracks had lost their moistness and were filling in with sand, so we built a fire ASAP. We filled the cans with cut up wax, melting it over a fire, and started copying footprints. We had been back over an hour and a half and had about 10 prints made. The wind was coming up and we had a long track ahead of us, so off we went to Paradise. We gave my uncle a few tracks, and I'm sure he shared them at school. We gave a few prints to VTA Junior College, although with a few years or summer's heat, the prints were slowly melting down. All of our friends and family knew about this happening, seeing the tracks we made, and I have never had a problem sharing. And then there were 3. My dad had changed jobs again, always working to make things better for the family. He designed many offshore oil field downhole instruments for a shitty company that stole his patents and went to work in the North Sea. Bastards. He had accomplished many great things, which I won't share. He would do 6 months on and a few months off, and that only worked a few years. My mom and dad were crazy for each other, and my mom went overseas for 6 months to England and Norway to see if she wanted to move there. During this time, my mom's mother came and lived with us kids. Man, that woman was strict. I spent a lot of time with both my grandparents, with both my grandmothers, so the transition wasn't too hard for me. I would sneak out my dad's 56 F100 for a run around the block, but couldn't do much more than that. I still went fishing, hunting, and tracking, though. My dad had bought my grandma some new teeth, and she would get so tickled eating lettuce. She loved the crunch of it, not having teeth for a while. She would ask me to get her some from the fridge, and we would sit at the kitchen table talking. One day after her eating, I asked her about her family migrating from Oklahoma to California. I wanted to learn, and she gave me an earful. They had come wet in the dust bowl and had a horrible time of it. You know, that meant they had come west in the dust bowl and had a horrible time of it. Her husband had a green thumb, and they worked in San Joaquin Valley from the south to north through many very large farms. I don't remember the year, but they went to the Santa Cruz Mountains for the apple picking season, I believe. They went to town to get supplies one evening, and on the way back up the mountain, there it was, about 30 feet ahead of the car. A giant sabe had just stepped onto the road. They both stopped and stared at each other for a bit, and then in one step, he was across the road and down the side of the hill. I believed her story. I could just see a family of sabe eating apples to their heart's content. My dad's parents loved the North also. They stayed at the Klamath River every vacation, fishing and camping until my grandfather died. I always felt I was born too old, as I wished I had more time with him than I did. My time with Grandma was special. I was at her farm every bit I could be, fishing the Ventura River with my grandpa's pole and gear. Oh, of course, I caught my first king in the Klamath, with an Indian guide and my grandma by my side. I hope I cleaned up any mistakes. I'll stop now, maybe more later. Be safe and everyone hang tough together. Peace. Steve only for now. Steve only for now. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm guessing this is just for me. Hold on, you guys. Sorry. Okay, man, got it. Read the note, appreciate it, and have taken note. Now, okay, I gotta read one more. It's not too long. And just a quick note too, I forgot to mention. I know I share a lot on here when it comes to my life. I think I do. I don't need to, but I do. But and I know I'm always bitching about time. But so the people are getting frustrated with me. I have people who I know who there's many people out there who just get angry with me for not doing what they want me to do in time. I'm not getting back to people in time. And believe me, if I could rattle off what I do in a day this past couple months, it hasn't been that easy. And sometimes I have service right in here, but most of the time I don't. And I don't have service around property, and I'm working on the property nonstop. And then once I get in, it's basically eat and go to bed, and then wake up, I'll have a coffee, do this, and then carry on. And I have literally just not stopped. I think I was probably getting exhausted for real this past month. But so I'm just saying, there's a quick note to all the people out there who get frustrated with me and unfortunately take it personally that I'm either not getting back to them in time or not even getting their frickin' messages. I've got text stacked up. I miss so much, it's not even funny. So just what I'm saying is, be patient. Do not take it personally if I do not get back to you in time, or if I don't get something done that you wish I would get done in time. Okay? That's easier for me to say it this way. Just because I've got texts and emails and messages by the hundreds almost daily. It's impossible for me to get to them all, and I'm usually out of service way more often than I am in service. Okay, guys? We'll see what happens the next few weeks. Some areas I will have reception where I am, and I will be alone. It'll be warm during the day and not much to do, and maybe I'll be able to take that time to catch up. Sorry for that little babble, but I guess I just sort of had to do that babble. I think there's a chicken getting ready to drop some eggs on my bench. Goofy animals. Okay, one more, you guys. One more. Western North Carolina Bigfoot, question mark? Hey Steve, I'm writing you this from lovely Western North Carolina. This may be lengthy, but it may or may not be Bigfoot related. My husband, who is now deceased, said when he was a young boy, he played at the bottom of his road where there were woods. Then a railroad track down the hill, then onto the Swannanoa River. He remembers seeing tall trees shaking and like someone or something was coming up the hill towards him, shaking those large trees. It stopped before he ever saw anything, and he ran home. He always wondered about that, and who knows what it could have been. As young adults before we got married, we took off about every weekend to camp at a place called Graveyard Fields, about 40 miles south of Asheville on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's crawling with people now, so I don't ever go there anymore, but one night we thought we had a big bear come into camp. We could hear it walking around, smell it, and it stayed a while. He heard a few grunts. I would not let my boyfriend open the tent because just the week before we had watched a new movie that was out called Grizzly. And I was so scared. I just knew some huge black bear was going to come in our tent at any moment. Thinking back now to 45 years ago, maybe it wasn't a bear. A couple years later, we were camped in about the same spot when we were awakened to the sound of a steady stream of water pouring down the top of our tent. A 4 or 5 foot tall tent. It had not rained that day or night, and this wasn't just dew dropping down from a branch or tree. He satisfied me by saying he thought it was a deer peeing on the tent. I've never seen a deer pee, but I don't think that was what it was, do you? Wow. After his daddy passed away, my son said he had told him this story before and thought it was a Bigfoot, and had just told me a deer, so I wouldn't be terrified. We used to camp up there a lot, and I'm a morning person. I'd always get up early and go about a half a mile to the lower falls. I'd stretch out on the big flat rocks surrounding the pool. I loved the morning sun in my face, warming up the rocks and all. I wasn't even scared, but sometimes I did get kind of the feeling I was being watched. Years later, after having 3 kids, I worked a second job at night, and one evening, one of my sons called and was clearly distressed. It was just dark, and he said there was something big in an old oak tree, and it was moving around and making a lot of noise, but he couldn't tell what it was. He heard a loud crack. I told him to go inside, which he did. The next morning, a limb as big around as a big man's body. Let me read that again. The next morning, a limb as big around as a big man's body was twisted around in that tree. Holy shit. Just a few years ago, another huge limb was twisted off and was down on the ground under this very same tree. One night in the summer, with windows all open, I woke up to a very strange and loud moan/yell. It went on for a few seconds. Then it did it 2 more times. It was very scary to hear that, and no one else in the house had heard it. It was almost like a moan, like it was hurt or looking for one of its kind. Our property borders the parkway, and we have all kinds of wildlife around here, but it was nothing I ever heard before. Then this last thing, which I think has been the scariest. We've had chickens for several years, and they have a mansion of a chicken coop with windows and a real door. But it's stuck. You had to know the knack of getting this thing open. It was terrible weather one night, horrible rains with thunder and lightning all night. Not fit for man nor beast. The next morning when I went to feed the chickens, which I always got the greatest pleasure of doing, they were all gone. 14 of them, and the door was shut. I have never figured this one out. We live in the woods. No neighbors close by. The coop is in the woods not far from the house, but that has ever since freaked me out. I know it had to be a Bigfoot. I'm like you, Steve. I don't ever want to see one, but I'm always keeping my eyes out. I'll consider myself real lucky if you get around to reading my accounts. You get so many thousands of them, you say. Well, take care. We've been watching you fish for those tuna. You should come and go off the coast of Cape Hatteras. We brought back 500 pounds of tuna and dolphins one year. Oh, I've ate those dolphin fish, man. They are so good. Mahi, Dorado. I'd love to do that again. Thank you for your time, Sherry. Sherry, absolutely appreciate your time. Your time to write all that out and share all that with us. And you know what it was, right? You know what it was. That description of that oak tree limb. Holy shit. I don't know if there's a chance. I would love to see a photograph of an oak limb that big twisted by anything. Wouldn't you? Maybe, well, I mean, it's not going to make any difference in what I know or what I accept as true, that's for sure. It's just something that I would like to see. Something that would interest me to see that display of absolute ridiculous power. Couldn't even imagine. So bizarre. The peeing in the tent. I think we've heard of. I definitely heard of somebody experiencing something peeing on the tent while they were in it. And that is definitely. I mean, you can't get much more of a display of no respect than that, right? Something wants to come up and take a piss on top of you while you're in a tent. That's the way I would deliver it if I described it. That's showing absolute zero respect, and that is also a display of I can do whatever I want and there's nothing you can do about it. What do you think of that? Okay, note taken. Carry on, please. Leave me alone, right? Anyway, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And if you have anything else in the future that you might find help somebody or help somebody you know, make sure you email it in, right? Now, I gotta get going, but a quick note. I want to share with you guys that I listened to a man, a Canadian man, who was equivalent of a SEAL when it comes to military and training. I forget all the guy's credentials. I wasn't really listening. I mean, I heard enough of his credentials to the man had my attention. I needed to listen to this man speak, and I believe he was possibly. Oh, what podcast was he on? He was on Rumble Channel. It wasn't Michael Jaco. It was another guy, Patriot Street Fighter. I think he was on that podcast, and I was fishing. I was in a place by myself fishing, and I had enough service. What I do sometimes is throw my phone somewhere where I can hear it, and I just let it rip. Anyway, this man had every military credential you could think of, and he was at the Pentagon and saw firsthand the destruction from what they say with confidence was a missile strike, not a plane. He said flat out, this is an eyewitness, professional military man who has seen and done it all and knows what it looks like from impacts of many different things. And he said with absolute confidence that a plane did not impact the Pentagon during 9/11. It absolutely did not, never did, and never could have. And I believe that man, that first-hand eyewitness. So there you go. I just thought I would drop that in closing because it's a fitting day to drop that and to never forget, and to never forget the people who are responsible for that atrocious act have never paid. They've never been outed publicly, and they've never paid. And that frustrates me. Anyway, may those innocent souls rest in peace. I'll be back again until I can't.